The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Pete Silva. The Honorable Mr. Silva, how are you, Pete?
Honorable Mr. Seidel, how are you?
Okay, but now you've been elected to Vice Chair of the Nashua City Republican Committee.
Yeah, getting back in the ring.
Okay, all right.
I think the major reason is that we need a new direction. We saw what happened last time, and I kind of got conned in a way because I tried to con Jack Tully into doing it, and he said he'd do it only if I did vice chair. So I think that's some of the things we need.
Yeah,
we need to
definitely
get more of the business people back in. I think, especially now this year, we really need to focus on the city election. Since it's an off year. And of course, Jack, with all of his ties and all the stuff he's been doing, he's a native. So
yeah, we talked to Jack after the election, and we got him on here. He's explained it. Now you have two other people that are in the were elected in our election, and they're all focused on doing things a little bit differently and getting more people to help do it, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a little more energy. I mean, I think the meeting we just had, you could just sense the difference. People they realize now if we're going to keep doing what we're doing, I might as well just give them the keys forever.
Yeah,
because we're never going to get it back.
Well, I think any government doesn't deserve to be 100% of one party or the other. It really, you got to have a little bit of somebody offering something, an alternative up there, and some of the things that the governments do.
Yeah, the thing I'm kind of excited about a little bit too is they're going to give us a little help this time because there's nowhere to hide. Yeah. Because it's unanimous. They have every seat. They're going to be exposed to some of the things they do. So even though supposedly the city is not partisan in the election, we all know it is, and especially on their side. But these things with the community theater center or whatever it's called, and now backing the library, backing this thing with this the drag queen thing. I mean you can't. Some things after a while you just can't hide. They're going to get exposed for that, and I think that's probably going to. That's why we have to capitalize on it right now.
Well, yeah, you brought up a couple of real issues too, because the library should be acting more like a school, and the school has processes where anything that's sort of questionable is really brought up, and either the people have to be further notified or something. They should have, is it age appropriate for the children? That's one of the things that I worry about.
Well, even the content, again, going back to my days in judiciary, sitting through the whole gay marriage thing. Yeah. It never was about it. They don't want to talk facts about it. It's always try to turn into you're a homophobe or you're this, you're that. Well, some of the pictures we saw, this guy that's doing this, with a nun's habit on and, pretending to be in a sex act, you're going to show that to kids? Yeah. They're not going to limit the age. There's no age limit. Right. And some of these liberal parents that are dumb enough that won't even identify their kid's gender until he tells them what he is or she, you got to put a stop to it. And the same thing, what would happen if, I think somebody said it last night at the meeting, what if there was they were depicting someone in a hijab instead of a nun's habit? Habit. I mean, you could never do that. Yeah. But if it's Catholic or Christian, it's open game, and it's not so much about being homophobic or anything like that. We should be able to speak our mind. Right. If you're not malicious in your intent, if you're not using it in a bad way, just tell them the truth. Truth is the truth. plain and simple. But they can't take that, though.
No, you're right. And I think, again, going back to having any governmental body that's all one party, I think the mayor's finding out that even he can't control completely Democratic aldermans, and they overturned his veto or something.
I think we're seeing it on the national level.
Yeah.
Now, I've been saying it's kind of, I think, I'm actually glad if we're going to lose that Pelosi's in charge. Let them beat each other up. They can't hide now.
Yeah.
And some of these people are just so far off the reservation that that's probably the problem he's having.
Yeah.
Everybody gets everything for free. I don't know how you pay for it, but it's free.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think anybody even spoke up against it. It was almost a unanimous, or close to being unanimous, overturn of his veto. So I'm waiting to see what's next. They got a couple of things on the fire, as you brought up the community theater type of concept, and of course they have a lot of things to worry about that they haven't really brought up. They haven't really even started their fund drive, which makes me wonder whether they know what they want to really do, or they have hope of getting what is it, $4 million or something like that.
I forget how many million. Yeah.
But I don't see their plan, and I don't see them looking again in another area. I'm on that rail committee, and they have to look at the whole picture, because if they want to put a terminal downtown, they got to restructure the roads. You're not going to bring anybody in right now. I don't know who wants to go through Nashua at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
You still can't do it.
And it's just as bad in the morning, So I don't know. There's a lot of things that all have to be considered if you're looking at these big projects.
Well, that's on the city level, but even like on the state level, obviously with the city committee, we still focus on state issues too.
Right.
And I'm listening on the radio on the way here today that they're having hearings as we speak to undo all the voter ID things that we did.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the part that I think people should realize, is that if it's common sense, I mean, how do you really argue about having an ID to vote? I don't understand that. And you watch, they'll vote in those committees unanimously.
Oh yeah.
Not one will dissent. And if, like you said, if you don't have it, especially when they're in charge, the Democrats, if we don't have some type of closeness in bodies, we have independent minds. We break off, which costs us votes sometimes, and go our own way, just based upon what it should be what your constituents believe in. But then they're lockstep. When it comes to issues like that, and I think if people get more exposed to it more, they'll start to see it. And that's why, like what Trump is doing right now nationally, this whole border thing, it's hard to hide right now. They're coming out and saying we don't need it. Most people say that's bull. We do need that. We do need a fence.
Well, they trying to turn things around so that they try to say that it's really not a serious problem. But that weren't they listening to how many criminals they arrested? How many different countries they came from? They're not just coming up from Latin America. And it's not just that we don't like Latin Americans, because there's lots of bad guys in there, or bad women even, that are doing evil things. You brought up the state. The other thing that they're going to be doing soon is getting rid of all those business tax cuts that we had. Now here we have tax cuts, and we wind up with excess money, even though we cut their tax rate. And now they want to break that off and go back to the higher rate, go back to where they were before, which kills a lot of businesses. If we're the type of state that builds from small, we don't necessarily attract these large companies, but we get a lot of people who are innovative, get people who like to work in our environment here. We got a beautiful state with 4 seasons, all sorts of opportunities for leisure and communication, and just living in the woods if you want to live in the woods. And I'm afraid that's what's going to really ruin us. because with the excess, and this year we have an excess with another cut that just went into effect, and don't they see that's cutting,
Well,
killing the
I
goose that
think,
lays the golden egg?
you know, like you go through the histories of my license plate and stuff, but you know, one of the things that I always talked about with like Trump especially is, you know, the political correctness thing that we talk about, but it's the media. You know, if the media, I think, is finally exposing themselves, and once it starts nationally, hopefully it'll leak down into the local things too. And if they just printed the news and just said what it was, we wouldn't be in half the mess that we're in. And I think that's what it is. If someone's not watching Fox News or listening to talk radio,
They don't hear some of
they
this
don't
stuff at
know.
all.
In fairness, they don't know.
Well, one of the things People View is going to do is to have some legislative discussions. We've already started with one where we talked about some of the cost of electricity and some of the laws that are going in, what they're looking at. But we'll be trying to put one on every week, or at least every other week, where we discuss some of the sessions that are going on up there in Concord. And we're also going to make people more aware of what the prime prime legislative issues are, and the voting that's going on, and when the hearings are, it's the different days of the week that follow the meeting that we will have talking about these pieces of legislation. So maybe that'll help some of the, because they don't really get into those discussions until after the fact. And if people want to make their comments heard, they have to get up there. And people, it's an easy thing to go to and see what these hearings are. It's nothing to be worried about. Lots of people get up there. They're a little bit nervous maybe, but it's a very friendly atmosphere for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah.
I don't know with them chairing all the committees now.
Well, you had the judicial one. I had Public Works, and that was a very congenial group. I was happy to be on there because we handled a lot of things, and we had discussions. We had votes that sometimes were very close, but we never got nasty about it. And we welcomed all the people that came, even though sometimes we might have chuckled about it after the fact, you know.
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, it seemed to me like the committees, they were very sensitive to the citizens that came in.
Yeah.
I had a couple instances where they were attacking them, and people got brought up for it. But they don't censure them. Who's the guy from Dover or Durham with the ponytail?
Oh, I can't remember.
I mean,
his
he
name
does some
either.
crazy stuff that he puts in the paper and everything. Nothing happens to him.
No.
By the party.
No.
So, again, I think what you're doing is a great thing. I think people need to be more involved in it. And even if they're not going to the meetings, they could go after their rep,
right,
at least, and just say, hey, look it. I mean, even that part of educating people, most of them don't have a clue who the rep is.
No.
They get it confused with city and state, and you know, we talked about this before. I just think there's way too many reps, anyways. I think the whole system that we have needs to be relooked at. But unless we get back in power, we're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Which another thing I think we need to focus on in the city committee this year is getting back up there, because next year is the next time around is going to be redistricting, which is they've never had control of that.
Which has been good, I think, but I'm sure that they're going to try quite hard to get that. But we have to look at that, and yes, we will use the public access TV to try to get the word out. People should be able to find out things, even if you don't have a computer. You can go to the library and use their computer. You can find out who your rep is very easily going to the website for the state and just put in your award, what ward you're in, and you'll find out who your reps are.
Well, I think one of the things we need to do too is we need to do more mailings, more things like that are direct, which cost money, which again is a nice reason to have Jack involved, to get to some of these local business people. Like you said, a perfect example, with them changing the tax laws, it's going to be in the business people's best interest to get involved and to make sure that it doesn't get too far out of hand. And unfortunately, all this stuff costs money.
Yeah.
And you know, that last campaign, we might have talked about it when I was here before, but you know, I saw at least 2 or 3 really nice 9x5 or whatever they are,
Yeah.
the long, the rectangular ones, glossy, you know, on cardboard, postcard type material, come to my house with all 3 candidates that are in my ward on there. I never had one of those. That's not true. When I did the special election, we spent money on that. But they spent on that election, it was either $50,000 or $60,000
Oh,
in
yeah.
an election that even if I had won, we still would have been in the minority. So, I mean, they're motivated, they're together, they got money. And I don't think there's any question that we have access to money too. It's just that people just complacent.
Well, that's true, but we certainly didn't have the money to send out paid people to go to the colleges and get the students to register. I mean, I'm not against the students voting, but they should be voting in their home territory, because a lot of the elections here, they don't really know about the local issues, but yet they have a vote on that, and they can determine who's going to be there just because they like the party, I guess, and that they're not living here though. And I don't understand why, as they said, the law now states that everybody who votes has the same conditions to meet. And if you can't meet the conditions...
And again, how do you argue that?
Yeah.
I mean, and they will. It's no... First of all, they could do absentee ballots.
Right.
It's all the
That's easy.
All they're worried about doing is president anyways,
Right.
for the most part. Do an absentee ballot. Make it simple for them. Have them all there for them to mail out.
Yeah.
Mail it for them. You know, we could donate stamps. I mean, I don't really understand how they can argue that.
Yeah.
If we showed up in their state and said, well, we want to vote in your election. No, you can't.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let you.
Yeah.
It's, to me, I've said this before, the first in the nation thing, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to see it go away. And the reason is because we're not exposing the corruption we have in our election system. And because if we did, it would go away. And so every 4 years, that's kind of cool that, you know, you could have a presidential candidate, potentially the next president, in your living room. But is it worth all the stuff we're losing over? I don't know. I don't know anymore. I've been saying that for a long time. You could just see it. Once I got involved in politics, it's just obvious. And a lot of these state reps, that you don't get paid, so you're doing it for kind of ego in a way, other than if you're in there to try to make a difference. And if you're trying to make a difference, you wouldn't be going back there for 20, 30 years. But that's what they get. They get this license plate, they get a few free meals a year, and every 4 years, they're a big shot. And again, I think, and that's both sides. Doesn't make a difference. So I'm a little bit cynical with some of that stuff.
Well, I'm getting to think about being term limits too, because I thought, we'll be getting rid of some people who really are worthwhile. They have the experience, which helps move things through some of our mechanisms that we have up there in Concord. But I think all the people that are listening in, consider running for it, even if you're only going to do it for a couple terms. That's all you have to do, doing your bit to make this a better state.
The other thing, and I say this almost every time I can throw it in, because I want to try to make it sink in, with people like us in the Republican Party that actually have, if you're not retired, you have a job, you don't just live off the system. So if you're doing that, it'd be more appealing to you if you go back to, it was 1982, I think. We used to go every other year.
Yeah.
So if you did every other year, that would relieve so much stress. You could go to your employer.
And some states do that now too.
Well, I say this every time again. The state of Texas, 10th largest economy in the world, they're every other year.
Yeah.
And they do it with less than half of what we do, legislators, which again cuts down on the amount of bills that get passed. I mean, I think in the beginning it was a great idea. You know your state rep. But back before social media and stuff came out, and people could only get their information by the newspaper or, by watching Walter Cronkite, it probably made more sense then. Because you could keep up to what's going on. But now it's everywhere. It's not the same thing. So I think that's a huge thing. And if we could get back in the, which I think we're gonna, in 2020, in the way we did in 2010, keep the governor's office this time. Think about the amount of bills that we overrode vetoes. Almost every bill we passed, we had to override a veto anyway. Well, everyone. But we passed some significant legislation other than right to work. And that's the other thing, is the union workers that are in the State House. We fill out forms to see if you have conflicts of interest. They're getting paid by the state. So I don't even understand how that could be allowed. It's just ridiculous.
Well, that and the pensions questions too. That's the other one that I think people have to limit themselves if they feel that they're getting paid.
It's not hard. Just you can't vote on this. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
But things like that, and I think I'm a big believer in anyways, is just if some of the people want to be state reps, or if you want to be even an alderman, you should get a couple, maybe 3 things that you're really passionate about, so you could stay like a laser beam on it.
Yeah.
When you start getting a little bit in here, a little bit in there, because you know better than anybody how hard it is to pass a bill, to get the whole thing from start to finish. You got to focus on it.
And if you do it right, you're getting your support even before it's really argued in committee. You know how to meet the people and talk about it and bring up the proper issues and explain it to them how this legislation is going to solve the problem. And I think you can do it if you only concentrate on a few.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, it's ridiculous to have 1,000 bills up there. Now, a lot of them don't get past committee, but it takes a lot of time for the committee to vote them down too.
But at least in the committee, so the way that our whole system is set up, really the only thing that matters is the Senate, because there's only 24 of those. You need 13. You got to get 201 in the House. So the lobbyists, they focus on the Senate. But now, if you think about it, what do those senators have? Like 4 or 5 committees apiece?
Yeah.
So think about the amount of bills. How could they possibly, humanly, give attention to
And there's usually only five senators there in a committee.
Right.
So this really doesn't get the thorough discussion like in the House when they have maybe 20 people on the committee. So.
That's why I say if there's a way we can get some media publicity, things like this, other things that are more mainstream. I think one of the candidates that ran is running for chairman, Keith, I forget his last name, but he was saying how they had ads on, was it city council office or something? They had ads on cable.
Yeah. That's right.
So that costs money.
Yeah.
And if people would realize that basically the average senator up there, the only bills that he's paying attention to is the ones he's lobbied on.
Right.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, now, most of those are big bills, but if you didn't have, like you said, 1,000 bills, then, if that was cut in half at least.
Yeah,
that's probably too many, but at least in half, and you would cut it in half if you had every other year.
Yeah.
You'd have to.
Yeah.
There's only so many bills, and you probably should limit how many bills they could write. I think I'm a believer in, it's a roll of the dice, but having the, committee decide if it's going to go, if you're going to even hear the bill.
Yeah.
But you could get in trouble with that too if you're in the minority.
Well, that's what they say. Every bill gets a hearing, but some of them probably deserve only maybe an hour hearing because they're not. First of all, I think we have to be a little bit more strict on how they're written. I think a lot of them. Well, we only have as a resource, was it 14 lawyers writing the bills for the 400,
I don't know the number, but it's minute.
People? Yeah. So they really are rushed because we only have a 2-week period to submit the bills. And then most of the people that submit them have no legal experience. And so they don't know the format. They don't know how to cover all the current laws so that there's no conflicts or something like that. So, yeah, I think we need to do something with the system to make it more effective and efficient. I agree with you.
Well, I think some of the things that you're planning, like, having a plan
Right.
of what we're going to do 1, 2, 3 right down the line, if we go in with that attitude that we're going to get elected, so therefore make the plan, and then we get in there, implement it. Because 2 years goes by pretty quick.
Well, I think one of the things we have to focus on too is seeing how many people we can get to be interested in being candidates, either for the local or the statewide offices. But we need some experience, and we're going to be educating people, show them how these things work, so it doesn't make them worry about going up there without the knowledge that they need to have to be effective. So I think that's one of the things we have to concentrate in the next 2 years here, during your term here, and as a committee.
Well, I think you talked to him already, and I think that's one of the big things Jack is going to bring. He can go to these local business meetings, the Rotary he's part of, and just talk to people right there. What you're saying is really important. Some people probably deep inside are intimidated by it.
Yeah.
It is, I have to admit. I mean, going into judiciary especially, I had to learn a whole new language.
Yeah.
It was almost like getting in my profession that I've been in with medicine. There was no more left or right. It's medial lateral. There's no more back and front. It's anterior, posterior. But you got to learn the jargon. And well, you saw how I did with running the hearing last night. I never did that before. But there's a lot to learn with that.
Oh, it's interesting. My first term, no, it was my second term, but the first time we were in the majority, I wound up being head of the executive board for the county. And
that's right, I forgot about that.
And I had a couple of people that were a little bit hard to control too in these meetings. And that was the first time I had, something like that. Once a month I had to take care of something like that. But it was very interesting, and it worked out. So please, people, contact us. You'll see the way to contact us at the end of the show. And let us know how you're interested. Every second Thursday of every month, we have a meeting. You look at our website, NashuaGOP.org, and it'll tell you the location, since we're looking for a new location right now. And we hope to see some of your new faces in the next month. Okay? Pete?
Thanks, Carl. Always
congratulations, and to your office, and hopefully you're very successful in what you want to do.
Oh, we're going to win.
Good.
We're going to win.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.